The crimson dust of Xerion Prime's fighting pits clung to everything like dried blood, and in many ways, that's exactly what it was. Dante Cross pressed his hand against the makeshift bandage wrapped around his ribs, feeling the warm seepage that meant his wound had reopened again. The roar of the alien crowd above echoed through the holding chambers beneath the arena, a sound like hungry predators circling wounded prey. "Move along, meat," growled the guard, a massive corvan with 4 arms and skin like burnished copper. The electrified prod jabbed between Dante's shoulder blades, sending lightning through his already battered nervous system. He bit back a curse and kept walking, his boots echoing in the narrow corridor that led to what might very well be his death. 3 months ago, he'd been piloting freight runs through the outer spiral, making enough credits to keep his ship fueled and his belly full. Then the pirates had hit his convoy near the Nexus Gate, and everything changed. Now he was just another slave in the gladiatorial pits of Xerion Prime, fighting for the entertainment of alien crime lords who treated sentient beings like playing pieces in some cosmic game. The arena entrance loomed ahead, its rusty gates like the maw of some mechanical beast. Through the bars, Dante could see the sand-covered fighting floor and the tiered seating beyond, packed with every species of alien scum the galaxy had to offer. They were all here for one thing, to watch him die. "Your opponent today is special," the guard said, his voice dripping with malicious pleasure. "Lord Vex prize beast, undefeated in 43 matches. The betting pools have never been higher." Dante's eyes swept the VIP section until he found Lord Vex, a bloated Thraxian whose purple skin glistened with perspiration and whose multiple chins wobbled as he laughed at some private joke. Vex's ornate robes were encrusted with precious gems, and golden rings adorned each of his stubby fingers. But it wasn't the crime lord that made Dante's breath catch in his throat. Beside Vex, connected to his wrist by a delicate silver chain, knelt the most beautiful being Dante had ever seen. Her skin had an opalescent quality that seemed to shift between pale lavender and pearl white in the arena's harsh lighting. Long hair like spun silver cascaded down her back, and even from this distance, he could see her eyes, large and luminous, the color of spring violets. She wore little more than gossamer fabric that did nothing to hide her elegant form, but there was something in her posture, in the way she held herself despite her obvious captivity, that spoke of unbroken spirit. "That's Serafina," the guard continued, following Dante's gaze. "A Celestine. Her people are scattered across the galaxy now, very rare, very valuable. Lord Vex has had her for 2 years, paid more for her than most planets are worth." The guard's laugh was like grinding metal. "Rumor has it he's so confident in today's match that he's wagered her along with half his fortune. By sunset, she'll belong to whoever wins the betting pool." The implications hit Dante like a physical blow. This wasn't just about his survival anymore. If he lost, this ethereal creature would be handed over to whatever monstrous alien had placed the winning bet. The thought of those violet eyes filled with despair made something fierce and protective unfurl in his chest. A bell chimed, and the crowd's roar intensified to a deafening crescendo. The guard unlocked Dante's gate with obvious relish. "Time to die, human. Try to make it entertaining." Dante stepped into the arena, squinting against the twin suns of Xerion Prime. The sand beneath his feet was warm and yielded slightly with each step, stained dark in patches where previous combatants had bled out their last moments. In his hand, he gripped a single weapon, a sword that had seen better decades, its blade nicked and its handle worn smooth by countless desperate hands. Across the arena, another gate groaned open, and Dante's opponent emerged. The crowd fell silent for a heartbeat before erupting in fresh cheers. The creature that stalked onto the sand was nightmare-made flesh, a ravager from the death worlds of the Gamma sector. It stood nearly 4 meters tall, its armored hide glistening black in the sunlight. 6 limbs ended in claws that could shred starship hull plating, and its elongated skull housed multiple rows of serrated teeth. When it roared, showing the pink interior of its gullet, saliva flew across the sand in droplets that sizzled where they landed. Dante had faced death before. In the shipping lanes, he'd fought off pirates and survived asteroid storms that would have claimed lesser pilots. But this was different. He was wounded, exhausted, and facing a creature bred for nothing but killing. The smart play would be to make his death quick and clean. Then his eyes found Seraphina again in the VIP box. She was watching him, those violet eyes wide with what looked like concern. For him. A complete stranger who was about to die for her freedom. In that moment, something shifted inside Dante's chest. Maybe it was the way the light caught her silver hair, or the graceful curve of her neck, or simply the fact that someone, anyone, seemed to care whether he lived or died. But whatever it was, Dante felt a fire kindle in his soul that burned away his exhaustion and fear. The Ravager charged, its claws digging furrows in the sand as it built momentum. Dante watched it come, his pilot's training kicking in automatically. Every ship had weaknesses, and so did every creature. The beast was fast, but its size made it commit fully to each attack. It was powerful, but power without precision was just waste. At the last possible second, Dante threw himself sideways, rolling through the sand despite the screaming agony in his ribs. The Ravager's momentum carried it past him, and in that brief window, Dante saw what he was looking for, a gap in the armor plating where the creature's neck met its skull. The crowd booed his evasion, hungry for blood and spectacle. In the VIP section, Lord Vex's laughter boomed across the arena. The human merely delays the inevitable, he bellowed, yanking on Seraphina's chain. By sunset, my fortune will be doubled, and you'll still be mine, my precious flower. Dante circled the beast, ignoring the fresh blood seeping through his bandage. The Ravager turned to face him, intelligence gleaming in its predatory eyes. It had learned from the first attack and wouldn't be fooled again. This time, when the creature charged, Dante didn't dodge. Instead, he ran straight toward it, his sword held low. The crowd gasped, certain they were about to witness the human's spectacular demise. At the moment of impact, Dante dropped to his knees, sliding under the beast's snapping jaws and driving his blade upward into that vulnerable gap he'd spotted. The sword punched through hide and muscle, finding the nerve cluster at the base of the creature's brain. Black ichor sprayed across the sand as the Ravager convulsed, its death throes sending up clouds of dust. With a final, shuddering breath, the nightmare collapsed. Silence fell over the arena like a physical weight. Dante stood slowly, his sword dripping alien blood, and raised his eyes to Lord Vex's box. The crime lord sat frozen, his mouth hanging open in shock, his multiple chins quivering with rage. Impossible! Vex bellowed, rising from his seat so violently that jeweled chains scattered across the floor. The human cheated. The match is void. But the arena master, a tall, stick-thin alien with translucent skin, shook his head. The match was fair, Lord Vex. The human is victorious. Your wager is forfeit. The crowd erupted in a mixture of cheers and angry shouts as betting debts were settled and fortunes changed hands. Lord Vex's face contorted with fury as he yanked Seraphina to her feet, the silver chain cutting into her delicate wrist. This isn't over, he hissed, shoving her toward the arena officials. Take the worthless slave. But know this, human dash, he pointed a fat finger at Dante, his eyes burning with hatred. You've made an enemy today. One who never forgets. As the arena guards escorted Dante from the sand, exhaustion and blood loss finally catching up to him, the last thing he saw clearly was Seraphina being led toward him. Her luminous violet eyes were wide with uncertainty and something that might have been hope as she faced her new master. But when their eyes met across the dusty arena floor, Dante felt something electric pass between them, a connection that transcended species, circumstances, and the chaos surrounding them. In that moment, he knew with absolute certainty that winning this match had been about more than just survival. He had claimed a prize beyond measure, and somehow, looking into those ethereal violet eyes, he suspected she might feel the same way. The preparation chamber adjacent to the arena felt like a tomb, small, windowless, and reeking of fear and old blood. Dante slumped against the cold metal wall, his adrenaline finally crashing as the reality of his situation hit him. He'd won Seraphina's freedom, but they were still trapped on Zirian Prime with Lord Vex's fury bearing down on them like an avalanche. Seraphina stood before him, her opalescent skin seeming to glow in the chamber's dim lighting. Up close, her beauty was even more striking, delicate features that spoke of aristocratic bloodlines, and those remarkable violet eyes that seemed to hold depths of wisdom and sorrow. The gossamer fabric that barely covered her trembled slightly, whether from cold or fear, he couldn't tell. "You're badly injured," she said, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Her accent carried musical undertones he'd never heard before. She moved toward him with fluid grace, her fingers hovering over his bloodied bandage. "May I?" "You don't need to ask permission," Dante said roughly, then caught himself. "I mean, you're not my property. You're free." Something flickered across her features, surprise, then a tentative hope that made his chest tighten. "Free," she repeated the word as if testing its taste. I had forgotten what that word meant. As she knelt beside him, carefully peeling away the makeshift bandage, Dante became acutely aware of her proximity. Her scent was intoxicating, like night-blooming flowers from some distant paradise world. When her cool fingers brushed against his fevered skin, he had to suppress a sharp intake of breath. "Your species heals remarkably quickly," she observed, examining the wound with practiced efficiency. "But this needs proper treatment, not arena medicine." "We'll worry about that once we're off this rock," Dante replied, though his vision was starting to blur at the edges. "Right now we need to dash." The sound of boots thundering in the corridor outside cut him off. Angry voices echoed off the metal walls, and Dante caught fragments: "Double the bounty, bring me the human's head, and the Celestine dies if she resists." Seraphina's face went pale, her silver hair seeming to dim. "Vex doesn't accept defeat gracefully," she whispered. "He'll have every bounty hunter and mercenary on Zirian Prime hunting us within the hour." Dante forced himself to his feet, ignoring the way the room spun around him. "Is there another way out of here?" "Service tunnels," she said immediately, moving to what looked like a solid section of wall. Her fingers found hidden pressure points, and a panel slid aside to reveal a narrow maintenance passage. The arena workers used these to remove remains, without upsetting the spectators. They slipped into the tunnel just as the preparation room door exploded inward behind them. The passage was dark and rank with the smell of decay, but it was their lifeline. Dante pressed one hand against the wall for support, the other gripping Seraphina's delicate fingers as she guided them through the maze. "How long were you with Vex?" he asked quietly, partly to distract himself from the pain and partly because he needed to understand what she'd endured. 2 years, 4 months, 16 days, she replied without hesitation. The precision of her answer told him everything about how she'd coped with captivity, by counting, by holding on to time as something that belonged to her. "He purchased me after my colony ship was raided. My people, the Celestines, were scattered across the galaxy now. Collectors prize us for our aesthetic qualities." The bitterness in her melodic voice made Dante's jaw clench. He'd seen enough of the galaxy's dark corners to know what collectors really meant. "That ends now," he said firmly. "You'll never be anyone's possession again." She stopped so suddenly that he nearly stumbled into her. In the dim light filtering through a maintenance grate above, her violet eyes searched his face with an intensity that made his breath catch. "Why?" she asked softly. "You could have taken the credits Vex offered for my return. You could have sold me to another collector. Instead, you risk your life for someone you don't even know." Dante found himself caught in those luminous eyes, feeling as if she could see straight through to his soul. "Maybe I don't know you yet," he said, his voice rougher than intended. "But I know I won't stand by and watch someone suffer when I can do something about it. And..." He paused, surprised by his own honesty. "There's something about you, Seraphina. Something that makes me want to be better than I was yesterday." A soft flush colored her opalescent cheeks, and for a moment, the horrors of their situation faded. They were just two beings, connected by something deeper than circumstance, standing in the darkness and finding light in each other. The spell was broken by distant shouts echoing through the tunnel system. Vex hunters had found their trail. They emerged from the tunnels into a narrow alley behind the arena complex, Zirian Prime's twin suns casting long shadows across the dusty trading district. The air shimmered with heat, and the sounds of pursuit were growing closer. "We need transport off-world," Dante muttered, scanning their surroundings. His legs were unsteady, and he could feel consciousness slipping away like sand through his fingers. "Any ideas?" "The spaceport is heavily monitored," Serafina said, her arms sliding around his waist to support him. "But there are independent smugglers who operate out of the crystal caves beyond the city. One of them might dash." "Might what, sweetheart?" They spun toward the voice, Dante's hand instinctively reaching for a weapon he didn't have. A woman stepped out of the shadows, and Dante's first thought was that she looked like trouble in human form. She was tall and lean, with short-cropped auburn hair and eyes the color of space itself, cold, dark, and infinite. Her clothing was practical spacer gear, but the plasma pistol on her hip and the confident way she carried herself marked her as dangerous. "Captain Mira Blackwood," she said, sketching a mocking bow. "And you two are the most wanted fugitives on Zirian Prime. Congratulations, you've just made my retirement fund." "How much is Vex paying?" Dante asked, buying time while his mind raced through increasingly desperate scenarios. 50,000 credits for you, 100 for the girl, Mira replied casually. "But here's the interesting thing, I'm not working for Vex." Serafina's grip on Dante's arm tightened. "Then who?" "Myself," Mira said with a sardonic smile. "See, I've been watching the arena for weeks, waiting for the right moment. Vex has made a lot of enemies, and some of them are willing to pay very well to see his prized possessions disappear permanently. Not dead, that would be crude. Just, elsewhere." Dante studied the smuggler's face, looking for tells. "What's your angle, Blackwood?" "My angle is that Vex destroyed someone I cared about 3 years ago," she said, and for a moment, her carefully controlled expression cracked, revealing old pain underneath. "Threw him into the arena for sport when he couldn't pay his gambling debts. I've been waiting for the right opportunity to return the favor. And we're that opportunity. You're that opportunity." Myra's smile returned, but it was sharp as a blade. "My ship's hidden in the crystal caves about 20 kilometers from here. I can get you off Zirian Prime and far away from Vex's reach. But we need to move now, his best hunter is already on your trail." As if summoned by her words, a figure appeared at the mouth of the alley. Torvin was everything nightmares were made of, 2.5 meters of genetically enhanced killing machine, his cybernetic implants gleaming dully in the fading sunlight. His species, the Nexari, were natural predators, but Torvin had taken it to an art form. "Lord Vex sends his regards," Torvin said, his voice like grinding gears. The plasma rifle in his hands hummed with lethal energy. "He's revised his offer. The human dies. The Celestine returns. No negotiation. Counteroffer," Mira said, her own weapon appearing in her hand with practiced ease. "You walk away, and I don't paint this alley with your entrails." Torvin's laugh was like breaking glass. "Captain Blackwood. Your reputation precedes you. But even you can't outrun a plasma bolt." "Maybe not," Mira admitted. "But I don't have to outrun it. I just have to outlast you." She fired first, her shot forcing Torvin to dive for cover behind a pile of scrap metal. "Move," she shouted to Dante and Serafina. "The caves. Now." They ran through the twisting alleys of Zirian Prime's industrial district, the sound of weapons fire echoing behind them. Dante's strength was failing fast, and only Serafina's surprising resilience kept him on his feet. She seemed to anticipate his stumbles before they happened, her arm around his waist providing exactly the support he needed. "The crystal formations interfere with tracking systems," she explained breathlessly as they reached the edge of the city. Before them stretched a landscape that looked like a frozen dream, towering spires of crystalline rock that caught and refracted the setting suns into 1,000 rainbow fragments. Beautiful, Dante murmured, then immediately felt foolish for noticing aesthetics at a time like this. My people believe crystals hold memories, Serafina said softly. That they remember everything they've seen across the centuries. What do you think these ones remember? She glanced at him, something warm kindling in her violet eyes. Hope, perhaps. Love finding a way, even in the darkest places. Their moment was shattered by the whine of plasma fire. Torvin had followed them into the crystal maze, his hunting instincts unhampered by the strange terrain. Mira appeared behind them, her weapon smoking from recent use. This way, she called, leading them deeper into the crystalline labyrinth. My ship's hidden in a cavern about a kilometer ahead. We can make it if dash. A plasma bolt struck the crystal formation next to Dante's head, showering them with sparkling fragments. Torvin's voice echoed from somewhere in the maze, you only delay the inevitable. Lord Vex's reach extends across star systems. There is nowhere you can hide. Maybe not, Dante said, an idea forming through his pain-clouded thoughts. But we don't have to hide forever. Just long enough. As they ran deeper into the crystal caves, Dante felt Serafina's hand squeeze his own. Whatever came next, whatever dangers they would face among the stars, he knew with absolute certainty that he would face them with her. The connection between them, forged in the arena and strengthened in flight, was becoming something precious and unbreakable. Behind them, Torvin's pursuit continued, but ahead lay Myra's ship and the infinite possibility of the galaxy beyond. For the first time since his capture, Dante allowed himself to hope that freedom might be more than just a dream. Mira Blackwood's ship, the Stardancer, was a modified Corellian freighter that had seen better decades. Hidden deep within a crystal cavern, its hull bore the scars of countless dangerous runs through hostile space. But to Dante, bleeding and exhausted as Serafina helped him up the cargo ramp, it looked like salvation itself. Medical bays this way, Mira called over her shoulder as she powered up the ship's systems. Basic but functional. We'll be jumping to hyperspace in 10 minutes, so patch yourselves up fast. The medical bay was cramped but well-equipped. Serafina guided Dante to the examination table, her touch gentle but sure. As she began cleaning his wounds with practiced efficiency, he found himself studying her face in the sterile lighting. You've done this before, he observed, wincing as antiseptic hit raw flesh. Vex, entertainments, often resulted in injuries, she replied softly, not meeting his eyes. I learned to tend wounds out of necessity. The implication hit him like a physical blow. Serafina, I'm sorry. What you went through is in the past, she said firmly, finally looking up at him. Her violet eyes held pain, but also strength. You gave me a future, Dante. Let me focus on that. As her fingers worked to seal his wound with synthetic skin, Dante became acutely aware of every point of contact between them. The way her silver hair fell across her cheek, the concentration that creased her brow, the warmth of her hands against his chest. When she leaned closer to check her work, her scent, those night-blooming flowers, made his head spin in ways that had nothing to do with blood loss. There, she whispered, her palm flat against his chest over his heart. Better? Their faces were inches apart. Dante could feel the whisper of her breath against his skin, could see the way her pupils dilated slightly as she looked at him. The air between them seemed charged with electricity, thick with unspoken desire and growing affection. Much better, he said, his voice rougher than intended. His hand came up to cup her cheek, thumb tracing the elegant line of her cheekbone. Her skin was softer than silk, warm despite its opalescent coolness. Serafina's eyes fluttered closed for a moment, leaning into his touch like a flower turning toward the sun. When she opened them again, the vulnerability there took his breath away. I've never. She began, then stopped, color rising in her cheeks. Never what? He asked gently. Chosen, she whispered. Never chosen to be close to someone. It was always, commanded, expected, forced. Her hand covered his where it rested against her cheek. But this feels different. You feel different. Dante's heart clenched at the trust implicit in her words. We have all the time in the galaxy to figure this out, he said softly. No pressure, no expectations. Just, what feels right. The ship's intercom crackled to life before she could respond. Hope you two are decent in there, Myra's voice carried through the speaker with dry amusement. Because we've got company, and it's not the friendly kind. They made it to the cockpit just as the Stardancer dropped out of hyperspace. Through the viewports, a sleek patrol vessel hung in the void, its weapons charging with ominous energy. Syndicate Hunter, Mira said grimly. They were waiting for us at the jump point. Someone's been talking. Lord Vex? Dante asked, sliding into the co-pilot's seat. Worse. The Crimson Syndicate makes Vex look like a street corner thug. Myra's fingers danced over the controls, coaxing every ounce of speed from the aging freighter. They control the slave trade in this sector. If they want the girl back. Her name is Serafina, Dante said sharply. Mira glanced at him, something like approval flickering in her dark eyes. If they want Serafina back, it means she's worth more than we thought. The comm system squawked, and a cold, mechanical voice filled the cockpit. Freighter Stardancer, you are carrying stolen property belonging to the Crimson Syndicate. Heave to and prepare to be boarded. Stolen property? Serafina's voice was barely a whisper, but Dante heard the pain in it. After everything, she was still being treated as an object. Not happening, Mira snarled into the comm, the Celestine is free. Deal with it. The patrol ship's response was a barrage of plasma fire that lit up the Stardancer's shields. Alarms blared as Mira threw the ship into a spiraling dive, using the nearby asteroid field for cover. There's something you need to know, Serafina said suddenly, her voice cutting through the chaos. About my sister. Dante turned to stare at her. Your sister. Zara. She was captured in the same raid that took me, but we were separated at the slave markets. Serafina's hands trembled slightly. I thought she was dead. But 3 months ago, Vex mentioned her in passing. She's alive, Dante. The Syndicate has her. The information hit like a thunderbolt. Mira looked back from the pilot's seat, her expression grim. That explains the response. If they have one Celestine, they want the matching set. Collectors pay premium for siblings. Another barrage of weapons fire shook the ship, and sparks flew from an overloaded console. We need to lose them, Dante said, studying the tactical display. Working on it, Mira replied through gritted teeth. She sent the Stardancer skimming between two massive asteroids, the hull scraping against rock. But this bucket won't outrun a military-grade hunter for long. Serafina moved to stand behind Dante's chair, her hand coming to rest on his shoulder. The simple contact sent warmth through him, steadying his nerves. There's something else, she said quietly. My people, we have certain abilities. Psychic resonance, emotional projection. I've been suppressing mine for so long, I wasn't sure if I could still. What kind of abilities? Dante asked, covering her hand with his own. I can sense emotions, sometimes influence them. And with another Celestine. She paused, her violet eyes distant. If Zara is alive, I might be able to reach her across space. Find her location. Myra's laugh was sharp and bitter. Great. We can find her so the Syndicate can collect the whole set. Another explosion rocked the ship. Anyone got a plan that doesn't end with all of us in chains? Dante felt something crystallize in his mind, a desperate, probably suicidal plan that just might work. How much do you know about Syndicate operations, Mira? More than I'd like. Why? Because I think it's time we stopped running. He turned to Serafina, seeing his own determination reflected in her luminous eyes. You said you could find your sister. I think so. But Dante, if we're caught we won't be. He squeezed her hand, drawing strength from the connection between them. I didn't fight my way out of those arenas just to spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. And I won't leave your sister in chains when we have the power to free her. Serafina's face transformed, hope and love warring with fear in her expression. It would be incredibly dangerous. The Syndicate's main base is a fortress station in the Nexus system. Then we'll need help, Dante said, turning to Mira. You said Vex had enemies who wanted to see him taken down. What about the Syndicate? Mira's eyes gleamed with sudden interest. Now you're talking my language. She yanked the ship into another evasive maneuver, grinning fiercely as their pursuers' shots went wide. As it happens, I know some people who'd love to stick it to the Crimson Syndicate. But it'll cost us. What kind of cost? Serafina asked. The kind where we might not survive to spend whatever we steal from them, Mira replied bluntly. But if we pull it off, we could strike a blow that echoes across the galaxy. Dante felt Serafina's hand tighten on his shoulder, felt the warmth of her presence at his back. 3 days ago, he'd been a broken gladiator facing death in an arena. Now he was planning an assault on one of the galaxy's most powerful criminal organizations, driven by love for a woman he'd barely known a week. It should have terrified him. Instead, he felt more alive than he had in years. Do it, he said firmly. Set course for wherever we need to go to gather allies. It's time to give the Syndicate something to really worry about. As the Stardancer jumped back into hyperspace, leaving their pursuer behind in a storm of frustrated plasma fire, Serafina leaned down to whisper in Dante's ear. Thank you, she breathed, her lips brushing against his skin. For choosing to fight for her. For us. Dante turned in his chair to face her, one hand coming up to tangle in her silver hair. Always, he said simply. Whatever comes next, we face it together. When their lips met in the soft lighting of the cockpit, with stars streaming past the viewports and the promise of danger ahead, Dante knew he'd found something worth fighting for. Love had found them in the darkest corner of the galaxy, and together, they would burn bright enough to light the way home. The hunt for Zara was about to begin, but first, they had to survive long enough to attempt the impossible. In Serafina's arms, with her heart beating against his chest and her whispered words of love in his ear, Dante couldn't imagine better odds.